When you were.
Yeah, you're gonna be right.
Okay, I'm ready to go. Okay, all right, colleagues, we will call our meeting to order. Of course, it's Wednesday, February 14th at 4 p.m. It is Valentine's Day. Some of us are wearing red to acknowledge the day. But more importantly, it is Heart Month. And it is time to raise awareness about the importance of cardiovascular health. And yesterday was also Wear Red Day. And some of you may have noticed that the municipality posted about women's heart awareness, because women, in fact, are disproportionately impacted by cardiac arrest and cardiac disease, even though it's not necessarily well reported. So please take a moment to think about your cardiovascular health, colleagues. And of course, February is also Black History Month, and the municipality has been sharing posts on our social media feeds to showcase and honor the contributions, experiences, and legacy of so many Black Canadians who have been so fundamental in shaping Canada's heritage and identity. Also, just two quick notes of thanks. Of course, we had a very successful Winter Carnival on the weekend, a bit muddy, a bit icy, a bit warm at times, but really overall, I think a very successful and positive experience for so many, and the refrigerated outdoor rink featured large. So we're really, I think, grateful and appreciative that it's up and running and can be an integral part of so many of our winter events. And then, of course, many of you either knew someone or were at the Sweetheart Brunch yourself. And as I think we've all highlighted through various posts and articles, over $300,000 has now been raised. This year was the 24th annual brunch, apart from a couple of years were virtual, but the fundraising carried on through those years. And we want to thank the Knights of Columbus for this year's contributions to the CT scanner fundraising effort, Beth Donovan, Leeds and Grenville Integral House, and Community Living, among others. So great brunch. And finally, happy 65th birthday, Deb. You're now officially 65. So I know you're embracing your 65th year. So happy birthday. All right.
Now we have a majority of seniors.
Yeah, the majority of seniors, there's three of us.
Yeah, so we're gonna be
I don't know.
representing.
I'm not sure. We have to talk about this, Madam Mayor.
I didn't realize the disparity was so significant. Yeah.
Well, we're
You're still in
building-
your 40s.
I am still.
I'm 51. And so, yeah, and we have the 60 plus set.
65 plus.
65 plus.
Here.
Okay, well, there we go. Okay. So with that, I'll call the meeting to order. And I'll read the land acknowledgement once again, or actually I'll invite a council colleague. I've read it once who would like to read it for this particular council meeting.
I'll read it.
Thank you.
The municipality of North Grenville acknowledges that the municipality operates on the territory of the Anishinaabe. We recognize all First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples who now call North Grenville their home. We respect and support the need for cultivating a strong relationship, and we commit to Indigenous informed decision-making to foster the path towards reconciliation.
Thank you. So we'll go to approval of the agenda. As council colleagues, you may know, we do have a fairly heavy closed session. We're moving that to the end of this meeting so that we can obviously hear from both our guests today and address any other items on the open part of our agenda. So with that change in order, as presented from the agenda, can I get a mover and a seconder for the adoption? Thank you, Deputy Mayor, Councilor Wilson. And that is that our council agenda for the regular council meeting held on February 14th be approved as presented. I will call the vote. All in favor? Good.
Yes.
Right, that
Yes.
carries. Thank you, Councilor Sullivan. So again, we'll put the closed business at the end. Any disclosures of interest this evening, colleagues? Not seeing
No.
any. Thank you, Councilor Sullivan. And we'll go to our presentations and delegations. And if I might, I'm going to invite Mr. Whitaker to go first, and then we'll hear from Ms. Paszynski, and thank you both for being here. Of course, we're not in our usual chambers because the AV upgrades are still underway and we can't run a hybrid meeting downstairs quite yet, but we're very, very close. So thank you for coming upstairs. So Mr. Whitaker first for 10 minutes and then Ms. Paszynski.
I'd be happy to have my neighbor go first.
No, you go first. It's all good.
Okay.
We're happy to hear from you. I'll just put the clock on, so.
Yeah, do that. You know how brief I can be.
All right, sounds good.
So,
The timer is on.
I'd like to thank Mayor Pecker and council for this opportunity to introduce Anishinaabeg trails. I'm not here to ask for money, maybe later. We're a volunteer group that is in the earliest stages of looking to identify, map, and label the routes on which the first surveyors and settlers were guided here by Anishinaabe guides. So you're going to get like Cole's notes on the history of why, and in terms of truth and reconciliation, this is about truth, and reconciliation can only be granted by First Nations.
Excuse me, Mike, apologize for interrupting. Did you want to cue staff when you
Yeah,
on the slide? there?
Yeah, I was about to say,
Great.
next.
There we go. Thank you.
So, this is, the Anishinaabe, claim. This came from the, Algonquins, of, Pikwakanagan, but this is also the map used by the Algonquins of Ontario. So hence we have decided on the name for Anishinaabe Trails. I do want to say that if you note that the southern border does not go all the way to the St. Lawrence, there is historical reason for that. And I'm not clear, but there's some degree of contention over that territory, which we will come to, but also that line was a line of demarcation where the St. Lawrence Iroquoians lived up until the late early 16th century. The next slide, please. This is an indication of the breadth of history that we have from pre-contact to contact. The point there, or arrowhead as people tend to call them, it's likely Mercer Church that came from the upper Mississippi Valley, and yet that point was found in Ken Mew's backyard. The axe head, which is in my collection, is called Biscayne axe, and it's a trade axe of the earliest type that was brought into North America. But a late friend of mine, an archaeologist, and who wrote much on these, that style was probably made in Montreal about 1700. And for those who have the eye for it, it does have the 3 proof marks on it. It was plowed out of a field near Perth. That's the gamut of the history. Next, please. So Gershom French came from Montreal, actually 10 years earlier in 1783, as they were looking for lands for which loyalists could move into. He came up from Montreal and with a number of people, including, he said, an Indian guide, usually the nameless type, like in the John Wayne and all the Western movies we see, the loyal servant who is nameless. And he charted from Carillon up to the Rideau, up the Rideau, and then crossed into the Gananoque River watershed. So we can see on the map on the left, the 2 brown marks are known and or supposed portage routes. The one on the right coming up from the St. Lawrence to a tributary of the South Nation, and, another linking, what is commonly called, Kempville Creek, but is actually the south branch of the Rideau, linking, across. The rivers that we see on the, map on the right, most particularly the, South Nation, was not looked at all by Lieutenant French, but it is a known route, and we might get into the history of that a bit later, if I may. Next. And there's another view of those rivers. We can see the Ottawa above in yellow. The turquoise is the Rideau and the South Branch. The greenish color is the South Nation, and in the lower left is the Gananoque and tributary. So it shows how First Nations navigated into this area, through this area, and settlers arrived here on these routes. You'll see Brockville is marked on the map, and Ogdensburg. Ogdensburg had first a French fort, Fort de la Présentation, it was 1749. And across the river, where Johnstown is now, at the top of the rapids, was a French post there that became more formalized in the 1680s when Fort Frontenac was built at what's now Kingston. And there is indication on other maps of a portage running up from near Johnstown to get into the South Nation. So there is an established 50-year French and British history that generally runs into our area and dependent on First Nations for much of it. And the next slide, if we may. Here's a look at routes that we can pretty much be sure of. There is the central orange line that indicates a trail coming down through North Gore to Kempsville and hooking over to Bolton Road and running down to Prescott. The yellow line on the left is generally Bolton Road running to Prescott. And the blue line, County Road 44 with its origins, and another one of these pathways, trails, also running to Prescott, but the link was not to Prescott initially, but to cross the water to Ogdensburg and Fort de la Présentation, and even earlier than that, to access the Oswegatchie River and travel southward into Haudenosaunee territory, the territory of the colony called Iroquois. So we have an established history running across our area of First Nation trails. The next, please. Here's the 1836 map of this township, or Oxford Township. On the left is the road that runs south. North is on the top of this, or at the bottom of this map, for whatever reasons. And you see that road running top to bottom is the road to Spencerville and on to Prescott. That purpley blob is Kemptville with the pathway running to Oxford Mills. And it actually, from the previous map, we know it ran across to Bolton Road on the right, which on this map is called the Trail to Prescott. And at the bottom there's that brown line running across, with the end section to the left being Burritt's Rapids and the road running across to to Merrickville. These roads we used in our settler and colonial past, but they were well-traveled by First Nation people. Can't go everywhere by canoe because the waters tend to run east-west, not north-south. Next, please.
Michael, you have about like 7 minutes.
Yeah,
Okay,
I'm just about done.
okay, perfect.
Here's a couple of looks at potential First Nation sites within the municipality. Limerick Forest is in the gore of the municipality with Limerick Road and Boom Power Road. We see that circled area. It's a potential Iroquoian site. There have been surmised portages running around it. It seems to be a site where people would have rested on their way to Roebuck or to Maynard because it is high on geological feature called a cane, and on the other side of the river it's entirely flat, so people would naturally camp on the highland. And here on the edge, on the right side of the map circled, that land, I'm not quite sure how it has been designated, but to be used by First Nation people. That is a potential site running between Concession Street and the south branch of the Rideau. It's a natural stopping place above the rapid water. So you're gonna stop there when you portage up or before you portage down. There are other potential sites in the municipality. Next slide, please. So we don't know where our sites were or are in this area because the Algonquin of the Anishinaabe were a very mobile people. But here at the mouth of the Gatineau River, across from the Rideau, is a site that was occupied for nearly 6,000 years. The archaeology has been going on for many years. That is in essence the Coles Notes history of the First Nation people here. I will say we decided at our most recent meeting to call this group, should it fully get off the ground, Anishinaabe Trails, because so many different people traverse this land. And to say Anishinaabe, it includes the Ottawa, the Algonquin, the Mississauga, and many other tribal organizations under that umbrella. And that is my rushed presentation of Anishinaabe Trails, and we'll be having our next meeting in first week of March as we begin to try to pull ourselves together. And I also understand the Indigenous Advisory Circle has this type of thing on their agenda for tomorrow night's meeting, and I will be attending. Here endeth the first lesson.
Thank you, thank you. It's fascinating history. Councilor Strachan.
Thank you. Mr. Whitaker. I appreciate the historical context here. And my question was actually going to be exactly that, about the Indigenous Advisory Circle. Just looking at your first page of notes that you've provided to us, there's, fostering public awareness, organizing public activities in association with First Nations partners. I think the position of this council has been to put the First Nations in the leadership role of these kinds of activities and so on. So I would suggest that perhaps, when you meet with the Indigenous Advisory Circle, that when you're having these conversations, that really the direction that I think we're looking to seek on these kinds of this kind of recognition or events or whatever would come from them, certainly working with the community and so on. I know with the Ferguson Forest as an example and the designated space there, the conversation started with Ferguson Forest, but it was then led by, members of the Indigenous Advisory Circle and so on. So I
Yeah.
think that's just I think that hopefully you can keep that in the back of your mind.
Oh, it's in the front of the mind, as Lorraine Reckmans has been shared. Everything here, and I have in her comments and my response to her. We don't want, it's difficult for this as an organization, not to be a settler-led organization, because it's the truth we are seeking, but in terms of, activities, we certainly understand that First Nations people should take the point
Mhm.
on this, and from my conversations with Lorraine Reckmans, how can I say this? We'll take guidance from her, because she's very clear about how she would like to see this done, and it's about acknowledgement, it's about truth, it's putting their place firmly on the map for all to see, and the creation of a commemorative plaque has come up in our discussions. Tom Graham, Fred Schuler, and I, looking at the waterfront access strategy, must have a First Nation acknowledgement. We would not be here otherwise.
And I think just to follow up, and last thing I'll say about this is that great to have the conversations, and I think that's valuable, and you're lending, your expertise and some of the historical knowledge that's been provided. The want to have a plaque, though, I guess just reiterate, that needs to come from the Indigenous Advisory Circle, and as much as it's a suggestion from the Trails Group, that there needs to be some sort of an understanding there. Much in the same way that, although they're not an advisory committee in the same way, we're looking to them to come to us with these recommendations.
Yeah, and that's, that there has been a discussion, I do believe, we recognized, some of us, when the or the Waterfront Access Strategy was presented, that it had a very settler orientation in the presentation that we heard, that I heard. And clearly there's a recognition that there has to be a First Nation voice there, so.
Yes, well, this timing sounds good in terms of that particular context. I'll recognize Deputy Mayor Barkley.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Whitaker, for that. It's very enlightening, I would say. We've got a lot of focus, and we put a lot of resources into acknowledging the settler history since 1790, when it was surveyed. And hopefully, to Councillor Strapian's point, that the Indigenous Advisory Circle will recognize that there has to be a better balance and a more broader understanding of the people who inhabited this prior to 1790 and who continue to inhabit here. And that there are resources that the municipality has used in the past for plaques and other ways of recognizing our history. I think it's overdue in terms of reconciliation versus truth. One comes before the other, obviously,
Well,
but that we can.
Yeah, we have to understand the truth before we.
Yes.
Reconcile.
Yeah. That there, I hope they understand that there are resources that I think this council would be willing to put into things like a historical plaque, if that's appropriate as far as I'm concerned.
Okay, any other comments? And I'll just look to Councillor Sullivan, nothing there. Councillor Wilson, go ahead.
Just quickly through you.
Yes.
Mayor Peckford, to Michael, thank you. I'm glad to see this getting started. The one thing that you and I both sat in one of the Indigenous Advisory Circle committee meetings where they talked about the waterfront access strategy and how they would like to make sure that the Indigenous are recognized along with that. So I foresee in the future that something will be done.
And I do want to say that, I have notes here also that the reception of the first European settlers, in this area was, not universally welcoming. There were incidents that weren't violent, but were threatening. It would boil down to, what the heck are you doing on our land? And we have made no agreement with you to be here. So I thank you for your time, and
Yeah.
I'll be like the trees and leave and turn to my neighbor here.
Well, thank you again. I certainly learned something in terms of the geography and early history of the area. So I know you're a history enthusiast.
Well,
Mr.
thank you. I
Whitaker,
just,
so-
wanted to put it in context, like the Europeans blundered in here. They weren't the great explorers, but they were led by the hand. So,
Indeed, indeed.
thank you.
All right, sounds good. All right, Ms. Pashinsky, over to you for 10 minutes.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
And Michael, before you go, I was just looking at all of Heritage Canada's grants.
Mhm.
They'll pay for your plaque.
Well, I'll just send let the municipality pay the freight. They got lots of money. They tax us fine.
Hey, we're trying to keep taxes low. What are you talking about?
That's right.
All right. Okay, over to you, Lisa, for 10.
Okay, thank you everyone for letting me come and speaking about the Kempville Street piano, so I've run into a problem. So as you know already, I'm trying to expand the Kempville Street piano so that it not only has summer programming, but some winter programming as well. And that is the difference between the Kempville Street piano summer concert series and the Kempville Street piano concerts on campus. So concerts on campus is just gonna be off season, and that's what happens on Kempville campus, or potentially the municipal center if it doesn't end up working out on campus. So between the development fund and between the budget request, I received enough money to do the pilot project. Yay. But the problem is, I didn't get enough for the street piano this time. So just to give you guys some numbers, I know I was really unclear in my original presentation, partly because I didn't know who was gonna give me what when. But I have some more solid numbers for you now. So, for the Kempville Street Piano Summer Concert Series, I needed to get together $9,891. And then I have my in-kind that Heritage Canada is going to match. So Heritage Canada is going to match the in-kind and the $9,891 with $13,805. Unfortunately, they weren't able to give me confirmation of that this week. They told me it was gonna be ready by end of January, but it's actually gonna be ready end of February. So the deficit there is a shortage of $1,391. What I was hoping, or what I was brainstorming about, was I was hoping to get permission to move that amount from the concerts on campus. Because a further funding source is Ontario Presents. I just was at a conference last week with them, and there's an undefined amount of money that they will be able to provide to help me extend community impact for concerts in the municipality, which I'm really excited about doing. It means that they'll have money to be able to help community groups partner with artists and all sorts of fun stuff. But unfortunately, that will only come to pass if I can get this $1,391 into the pot for the summer street piano series. I hope that's clear.
I think it is. I'll just open it up for questions or invitations for clarification. Deputy Mayor, did you wanna?
Yeah, it's a lot of, street piano. There's a summer concert series and
That's what I've always been doing. So the summer
Yes.
concert series is what we know.
that has a shortfall of
Yes.
1,391.
That's right.
And is the 13,500 from Heritage Canada contingent on having that additional? Okay, so we want to see that go forward. I don't
Yes,
have a
please.
problem with transferring it. Now, what do you want to have happen with the concerts on campus? There will be a shortfall.
There will be. If
Will you
we
be
can-
able, sorry,
So-
here's my
sorry.
question. It's okay.
Uh.
If, the funding that you have currently from the municipality, and I think the Arts and Culture Development Fund, if there's a shortfall of that $13,991,
Mhm.
is it still viable without the Ontario Presents?
Ontario Presents, possibly may fund that. The thing is, there could, this number includes the library charging me 2,000 again.
Yeah.
But I recently spoke to Emily, and they are trying to wrap their heads around whether they might be able to pay for, whether they might be able to pay staff, which means all of a sudden I'm up this amount. But they haven't been able to tell me that yet, and Heritage Canada needs to know,
Right away.
yeah.
Okay, can I just?
Yeah.
Yeah, did you have a follow?
Yes, I did. Yes,
Okay,
I did.
go ahead.
So speaking of the Concerts on Campus series, again, if it's minus that $1,391, is it still viable? Because I understand that you're charging tickets and
I'm
you've
charging
made an estimate of what sales would be, et cetera.
Yeah, so I can squeak it a little bit. And there's no guarantee from Ontario Presents, so they can't pay the artists, but they can pay things like the hotel bills and the travel fees and all of that. It starts to balance out. It starts to balance out. I can't 100% tell you that it will work, because if it has to come out of my pocket, I don't have that right now, but. Yeah,
Can I just ask, and I want to recognize Councillor Sullivan, who also has her hand up.
sure.
What your communication to, right, as per the delegation request, says, could we move 1391 from the Concerts on Campus Fund to street piano? And we are unable to offer the summer series without the additional $1,391. I think we should prioritize the summer concert series. That's a piano series where we may be receiving up to $15,000 in partnership funds. So you're suggesting that for this year, you wouldn't proceed with the campus concert series, is that right?
I'll try, but if I
Yeah.
can't make it up, yeah.
So
I'd
then
like to delay it.
the allocation to the concerts on campus, if it's not utilized, would just be returned to the municipality, is that right?
Sure, unless you guys give me a provision where you let me hold on to it. So
Right.
a lot of arts grants are set up that way.
Right, so I'm just gonna
Yeah.
recognize, certainly that's something we could consider, I think at this
Yeah.
point, the policy says within the year, right?
That's right.
So, but regardless, I think, just to stay focused on the request, you're asking that that 1391 gets transferred to the piano concert series. And the viability of the concerts on campus is then not clear, right? And if you
That's
don't
right.
proceed, you return the money. And if you do proceed, you just proceed with less money at this stage.
Less money from you guys.
From us, yeah, and if you're successful in other fundraising, fund generating activities, then good for you, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so cause I guess from my perspective, and then I'll recognize Councillor Sullivan, at this stage, my inclination is to say, sure, fine, take it, run it, you're getting a grant, which is important to us, we'd like to see that there's external money coming in. And at the end of the day, if the campus concert series isn't viable, then, I think we would expect, unless our policy changes, that, you would return the money to us and maybe try again another year, right?
Yeah.
I know that the policy around whether or not a community grant is expended within 1 year may change or it may not, but I just wanted to distill the conversation into this particular ask, recognizing that there are implications. But I'll go to Councillor Sullivan. Councillor Sullivan.
Okay, thank you very much, Madam Mayor. And through you to Lisa, I think this request is absolutely very reasonable. And some of my questions have already been asked and answered by the Deputy Mayor and Mayor. So I agree with, I would even move to do this transfer of money. and then knowing that you would return the money that you, if the concerts on campus does not proceed, then that money would be returned and you could reapply in future years. So my question regards the last statement now. It says, remaining free to the public in the future, lowering the amount needed from the municipality to fund it. If the series is canceled for the year, we may lose that opportunity. Are you referring to the street piano?
Yes,
Okay,
it's because I'm heading towards being a nonprofit. And when you
Yeah.
become a nonprofit, you can apply for core funding from larger funding resources, which means I wouldn't have to ask of it from you guys,
Okay.
so.
Well-
That's where I wanna go.
good. Well, thanks, Lisa, and thanks for all your diligence in seeking outside funding for all of these projects that you have on the go. I would like to see the summer piano series continue, because I think each year it gains momentum, and I wouldn't want to see it canceled for anything other than a pandemic, God forbid. So if
All right.
there's no other further discussion, I would move that we transfer the money.
Okay, before we do that, I do have Councillor Strachan's hand, but I'd be happy to accept you as a mover once we get there. Oh,
Okay.
great. Councillor Strachan is willing to second your motion. Councillor Sullivan, so that's wonderful. And that is, thank you, Chloe's crafted something that council reallocate $1,000, 391 from the 2024 community grant funding to the Campbell Street Piano Concert Series from the campus concert series. And as I've said, Councillor Sullivan, you are moving that, and Councillor Strachan is seconding that.
So just to add to the discussion, thank you very much, Lisa, for this. You know, I don't think that there's any particular concern. It's no additional cost to taxpayers. This is money that was already going to be allocated, so it's just sort of shifting around to a different pot. It would be nice to see the campus series get off the ground, but if that's not feasible, and the reality is the difference between the two pots, once the money's transferred, is about $800, actually less than $800 that would be remaining. So it doesn't give you a lot to start with for the campus project, but if this opportunity, because you'll be on their radar, means that next year the summer series is taken care of and, you know, you can apply for that core funding, then certainly wouldn't want to lose that opportunity. So that's great to hear, and also encouraging to hear that you're having ongoing discussions with the library as well regarding that. So that's promising. So who knows, you may salvage some money anyway.
That's
You never
right.
know.
Let's see, and I'm not going to take the money for the concerts on campus until I actually have
Right.
enough
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
do it. So, yeah, it's not in my account. I don't want to have to give it back. It's okay.
It's smart.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Great, okay, so any other discussion on the motion? I'm not seeing any. Thank you, Lisa. Great news that you were able to secure those external dollars. Fabulous. I will call vote. All in favor? Good.
Yes.
That carries. Thank you. Perfect. So I think that concludes your presentation, is that right?
Yes, thank you so much.
Okay, sounds good. Do you have an idea of the lineup for the piano series yet, or are you still working
It's
on it?
hard because it's the difference between a $300 musician and $1,000 musician.
Oh.
But
Wow.
I am starting to reach out for the smaller acts, and then, yes, we'll see.
Okay, fantastic. Well done. All right.
We have.
Yes.
Consent.
You're gonna do that.
Okay, so I think we have one other set of items to deal with, before we take a short pause. And then we're gonna go into close, right? So we have our consent. So thank you, Lisa. We're just gonna carry on if you don't mind. We're trying to get people home for a late Valentine's Day dinner of some sort. So thank you again.
Thanks.
So council colleagues, you'll see that there are a number of items under our consent agenda. So should any member of council wish to remove an item from the consent agenda, this is your opportunity to do so. Otherwise, I will accept a motion, obviously, for the adoption of the consent agenda as presented for tonight's meeting. Okay, excellent, thank you. Councilor Strachan is seconding. And I will ask if there are can't really ask if there are any questions because the consent agenda presumes that we aren't having any discussion on the items listed, so I'm just gonna call the vote. All in favor, please. Good, that carries?
Yes,
Excellent, thank you, Councillor Sullivan. Councillor Sullivan, we're just taking a short break to transition it to closed and to give people a little bit of food and water. For those of us who aren't in New Zealand, so if you can give us 10 minutes, we'll come back and we'll get right into our closed.
okay, same link.
Different link.
Oh, okay,